So a few days ago, I had the misfortune of endearing one of Candace Owens' rants about George Floyd and everything that's going on surrounding his murder. Basically, she was bashing a dead man, a dead, murdered, tortured man, George Floyd, and further, she was bashing basically Black people in general, the Black community. I saw it a few days ago and I was so taken aback. I had heard of Candace Owens before. I realized that she is somebody who essentially parrots Republican right-wing talking points, and she is a young Black woman. Prior to 2015 or 2016, she actually was a liberal, and she was very outspoken as a liberal as well. Something shifted and she became token Black right-wing talking point. Things that she has said in the past, things that I've seen her say and have heard her say in the past, they always bothered me, but it was not until I endured this 18-minute video of her bashing a tortured, murdered George Floyd that I could not keep my mouth shut over it anymore. Because listen, the truth is I absolutely believe that anybody can have whatever viewpoint they want to have. If they want to be a Republican, you can be a Republican. It doesn't matter what your race is, what your gender is. If you want to do that, then do that. But here is where I am infuriated by her. She is not just parroting the right-wing talking points, she is bashing and betraying her own people in the midst of it. And from what I can tell, it seems like she is basically just really self-indulgent and self-righteous in saying that she was here, or she's here on earth to bring all of this information to light to the Black community. And I'll tell you, I'm not sure what kind of righteous things she believes that she is doing, because Jesus himself was betrayed by his own people. So she thinks that she is just some, I don't know, mouthpiece savior that is going to open up and awaken the Black community. And so she starts off her video. First of all, the title is entitled Confession, I Do Not Support George Floyd. Not only did she entitle it Confession, I Do Not Support George Floyd, she kind of in the beginning opens up, and I'm going to leave the link of her 18-minute video for you guys so that if you want to check it out, you can. But she says that according to a book, the Black community is the only community who caters to the lowest common denominator. What she's referring to is apparently the Black community props up criminals and yells and screams and protests and riots and loots because of how Black criminals are treated. Okay, first of all, that is so backwards. That is entirely false that the Black community or only the Black community caters to the lowest common denominator. Because, you can find that sort of catering in any race, of all races. I mean, let's take the person that she apparently looks up to, Donald Trump. Let's take him. That dude is a pedophile. He is a rapist. There's so many women who have come forward and said, yes, he has sexually assaulted me. We have it on tape whereby he says that he does that kind of stuff. And people in the white community, AKA white supremacists, are propping him up. So how dare she say that only the Black community does this kind of reaction? Furthermore, it is not that we are propping up criminals. We are propping up our right, our constitutional right to equality and to be treated equally. That is the issue here. George Floyd's past is not on trial. Chauvin is on trial along with those two other cops who killed him. Those are the people who are on trial and who should rightfully be on trial, not George Floyd. So if what she says is true and accurate of the rap sheet of George Floyd that she so despicably reads off as he is buried in the dirt. If those crimes are true, there's absolutely some crimes on there that he has committed, but that is not the point. Furthermore, he served his time. So he committed crimes, justice was served, and he is now out. So I don't understand why in the world anybody in their right mind, let alone somebody in the Black community, would drag George Floyd's past and use it against him. Not only use it against him, but use it against her entire community. It is despicable. A victim does not have to have an amazing track record and no rap sheet in order to be a legitimate victim. The point is that he was tortured and he was murdered by 3 different officers in broad daylight while cameras were on them, while their own body cams were on them. Now, the question should be, how did we get to that place in society? How did those cops have the mentality that they had, that they really believed that they would be able to do that in the broad daylight and get away with it? That's the question. Moreover, Candace, are you saying that if George Floyd had a clean record, that would have saved his life that day? Because that's what it sounds like you're saying. And we in the Black community, we are also equally infuriated when people like Philando Castile is murdered, Ahmaud Arbery is murdered. You are trying to say that the Black community only gets outraged when it's criminals who are murdered. Okay, well, there was outrage with Philando Castile. There was outrage with Trayvon Martin. There was outrage with Tamir Rice. So how dare you try to twist and turn a narrative against your own people, against the Black community? Because all you're doing is you are, just like Trump, emboldening the white supremacists of the world. You are helping them, if they have any kind of emotion, any kind of soul, any sort of heart, you are helping them sleep at night with the nonsense that you came and spoke, with the nonsense that you have now spread to, last I checked, around 35 million people. I don't even know where she got in her mind that people are holding George Floyd up as a martyr or as some hero. Nobody has ever said that. Nobody has ever believed that he is a martyr, or even a hero for that. What he represents is the last straw. That's what he represents. He represents a faulty judicial system, a racist judicial system, and a judicial system that is made and designed to oppress others. And then she goes on to say that the reason why she is bringing up George Floyd's past and not Derek Chauvin's, the murderer, his past, is because the media is not misconstruing who he was, that the media is portraying him as the evil devil that he is. And then she moves on and she says, so that is why I am not going to be talking about Derek Chauvin. Right there is disgusting and ridiculous. She's completely missing a whole section and a whole point of what we are so outraged with in the first place. The problem is absolutely Derek Chauvin and the fact that he had some 18 complaints against him for excessive force. But more than that, there's a bigger picture. Why is it that Derek Chauvin can be on the streets after he has shot and almost killed another Black man prior to George Floyd, after he has 18 strikes on his record, on his past, on his rap sheet? The question should be then, Candace, why is Derek Chauvin out on the streets? There are multiple Derek Chauvins running around with a badge and a gun who have had complaints against them. I don't know about you, but any job that I've ever had, if I had 18 complaints, it wouldn't have happened. I would have never been able to reach 18 complaints. So why is it that the police force is able to have all of these complaints against them and no real action is taken against this officer? What is that saying? It's saying that it's okay for them to perpetuate what they are doing. Then she goes on to talk about how George Floyd was high on some pretty hardcore drugs. Once again, she is looking at it so narrowly And she's looking at it very narrowly, because what she is wanting to do and what she is doing is demonizing and vilifying the Black community. And so it appears from his record that he actually had a drug problem. He had a substance abuse problem. He did spend different stints in prison. Now, why don't we talk about the larger conversation? Where's the prison reform? Why don't we talk about that? Why doesn't money get put into a prison reform so that these criminals can get reformed? And why don't we talk about where is the help for somebody who is addicted to drugs? We would rather put excess money into militarizing the police than putting money into our communities to actually help people that need help. It all gives way to a bigger issue and bigger questions that we need to be asking and need to be demanding answers to. All Candace is doing is simply pointing the finger to the Black man, and it is despicable and disgusting to me. So then she goes on to say that racially motivated police brutality is a non-existent issue. She says it is a farce. She claims it is made up. Out of all the astonishing, shocking, disgusting things that I heard her say, this one would top the list. For her to say that police brutality, racially motivated, is a non-issue is so blind and absolutely disgusting. There have been an innumerable amount of law enforcement officers who have absolutely agreed that we do in fact have a racial systemic problem in our system. They have agreed that cops need better training because they're scared for their lives. They have agreed that we need better relationships between the Black community and cops. If you go into a white neighborhood and then if a cop will go into a white neighborhood and then for the very same reason go into a Black neighborhood, the outcomes can be very different. And for Candace to blame the Black man for that is just astonishing. It's so disgusting. Not only that, there are multiple public defenders. And in fact, there is a march going on in my city that was started by public defenders because of the racial injustice that goes on in the judicial system. So for her to act like it is a farce and it is untrue, the only response that I could have to that is, are you getting paid by the right wing to try to dispel actual facts? What else could it be? If it's not that, then it is, plain stupidity. But like I said, I have seen her speak. I have seen her demeanor, and I don't believe that she is a stupid woman. I think that she knows exactly what she's doing, and I think that she is getting paid for it. The thing is throughout this entire video, she is just really trying to narrow the outlook and really trying to give a very narrow narrative of all of these things that are going on. She's never looking at the bigger picture, never asking questions, important questions that need to be asked and that are begging for answers and have been for the last 400 years. Because another point that she brought up was a Black chief. I believe he was a retired chief in the police department, and apparently he was trying to protect a shop that was going to get looted or the riot was going to touch in some way. And so he was trying to protect that shop. It was a pawn shop, I believe, and he was gunned down and murdered during that. While I know and believe that that is absolutely a travesty, should have never, ever, ever happened, I don't like the narrow narrative that she is trying to attach to this. In her narrow viewpoint, what she's saying is, how dare the Black community go out and riot and protest over George Floyd, who is a criminal, who is not an upstanding person, who is not even a good person. How dare the Black community go do that? Because look what's happening. Black men, good Black men, or good Black people are getting murdered over this loser, essentially, is what she's saying. But what she is not realizing, what she is not getting, and what she is not explaining is that it doesn't matter who the victim was. Like I said, a clean track record probably would not have saved his life that day, but The bigger issue here is the reason why people are out there protesting and voicing and standing up against this murder is because they all know that it could be them, that they could be next, that their son can be next, that their dad could be next. That is why they're out there. So for her just to try to put it on George Floyd and scream to the world that he is a criminal and how dare we do this because of criminals, I would understand that perhaps if that was the first time that ever happened, but it wasn't, Candace, and you know it wasn't. You know that it happens over and over and over again. I can name 5 people off the top of my head right now who are unarmed black men killed by police officers. So it's a problem. It is absolutely 100% a problem. So don't try to act like this rioting just magically came up after the murder of George Floyd. Martin Luther King said that riots are the language of the unheard. So riots don't just happen after one gruesome murder takes place, whereby the murderer is somebody who is supposed to serve and protect. These protests and the small amount of rioting and looting that's also going on is in response to a very large, very long time issue and problem that we have in this country. Our judicial system was never meant to protect or to be equal for black and brown people. Our system was set up for the white man. So our system isn't broken. It is actually working precisely how it was designed to work. You know, I saw a cop, it was a white cop, and he had a YouTube video. He really came out and he spoke what so many of us have known for so long. And it was just amazing though that he would speak on it, because he had been a police officer for many years, and he's retired now, I believe, but he had been for many years. So he was out there, he was out on the streets, he saw everything. He saw what goes on behind closed doors in the precinct. He saw what goes on every single day in these neighborhoods. And so just briefly, what he explained is the fact that many of us know that slaves were brought here from Africa. They were brought here against their will to become slaves. So that happened, and the people who were brought here to be slaves, they were never intended to have equal rights. They were never intended to be equal with the white man. That's why they were slaves. That's why they had them as slaves, because to the white man, they were inferior to them. But as time went on, our ancestors wasn't having it. So much collateral damage had to happen for us to even get to where we are today. But if we're going back to modern day slavery, right prior to Jim Crow era, I'll say, again, those white people never intended for blacks to be a part of their constitution. They never intended that they would have the same rights. They never thought that there would ever be a self-sufficient black person that was going to come out of these slaves. So they never wanted it. And so what they have done is they have evolved in their oppression and in their ways that they do it. It went from slavery to Jim Crow to now the prison system. And that is exactly how it was designed to work. And for somebody like Candace to get on here and spread this disgustingness online is just appalling to me. There's no way I could keep my mouth shut about it. It is appalling. She is literally blaming the victim. That's what she's doing. And it sounds like that's what's going on with every single aspect of the black community. Oh, you haven't been able to pull yourself up by the bootstraps. I'm not going to blame the fact that the schools are not great and that schools depend on real estate. The real estate that people pay is how good their school's going to be, because that's how much money is going to be put into it. And so therefore, if you can live in a nice neighborhood, then chances are you're going to have nice schools. If you have nice schools, chances are you're going to have great teachers. If you have great teachers, chances are you're going to get a great education. It is systemic. And for her to say it's not is just absolutely appalling. And few bad apples, no, we have finally waken up to that backwards, lying, deceiving narrative. It is not a few bad apples. Okay, first of all, apples are not even that bad, even when they're bad. So I don't even know why they're saying bad apples. There's no way that we have the problems that we have today with police brutality because of a few bad apples. What it is a whole mentality. It is an entire system. It's an entire mentality. And that is the issue. That is the problem. By the way, how are you distinguishing the good apples from the bad apples? Because if I think about it, let's go to the George Floyd murder. There was 4 cops there that day. 4 cops were there that day. 3 of which leaned all of their weight on George Floyd, on his neck, on his back, and on his legs, while he was desperately begging for his life, telling these people that he could not breathe. Not one of them got up from him. Not one of them tried to even whisper and say Derek Chauvin's ear because he was on his neck and say, hey, dude, maybe we should put him in the back of the car. After all, there are cameras recording us right now. Maybe we should put him in the back of the car. He's begging for his life. Not one of them did that. They knew that it was broad daylight. They knew that they had cameras. They knew that the internet was watching them, and they didn't do anything. And Candace is going to try to say that this is a few bad apples. It's not a systemic problem. I am so disgusted and appalled by that. It blows my mind. Like, how dare she? How dare anybody? How dare anybody of any race, of any gender, of any religion, how dare anybody say that it is not a systemic problem? That it's a few bad apples. If it were a few bad apples, at least one of those 4 cops would have said something. They weren't afraid that there were going to be consequences. They didn't care that they were being filmed and that they were torturing a man that was begging for his life, and people, bystanders, were begging with him. All the while, we see Derek Chauvin, a police officer with 18 complaints on his badge, who has shot a black man and almost killed him in the past. All the while, we see him so nonchalantly, just another Monday afternoon, hands in his pocket, knee on George Floyd's neck while he begs for his life. Nonchalant. Didn't have a care in the world. I bet you now, those police officers, all 4 of them, I bet you in retrospect, they wish so bad that they would have heeded to the words of George Floyd. Then she goes on to say that the black community commits an overwhelming amount more crime than the white community. But again, she doesn't look at the big picture. What she does is she gets a narrow right-wing narrative, and that's where she stays. She doesn't try to see the bigger picture. She stays with a right-wing narrow narrative. She's actually trying to say that the black community commits more crimes than the white community. And basically what she is saying is that we as the black community are inherently prone, that it is inherently in us to commit more crimes than white people. And then she says, no, I'm not talking about because the cops police more heavily in the black community. That's not what I'm referring to. Okay, well, you gotta be referring to that. You have to refer to that. You gotta refer to the full picture. Because last I checked, the stop and frisk that was recently banned, research shows that persons of African and Hispanic descent were stopped more frequently than whites, even after controlling for precinct variability and race-specific estimates of crime participation. 90% of those stopped in 2017 were African American and Latino, mostly aged 14 to 24. 70% of those stopped were later found to be innocent. By contrast, 54.1% of the population of New York City in 2010 was African American or Latino. However, 74.4% of individuals arrested overall were of those two racial groups. So that alone absolutely lays out the fact that we have a systemic problem, a judicial problem, a policing problem. There were so many stories that came out of this stop and frisk and that whole experiment that they did. Perhaps it was not meant to be racially charged and racially motivated, but indeed it became racially charged and racially motivated. So for her to say that Black communities, that Black people inherently do more crime than white people is just flat out wrong. Absolutely 100%. There is an issue. There is a racial disparity in our judicial system, in our policing system. Did you know they even did studies on how light-skinned Black people get less prison sentences, less time, they're less harsh than that of dark-skinned Black people. It is absolutely disgusting. It is absolutely ridiculous. It's funny. You want to talk about the lowest common denominator and people rallying around for the lowest common denominator. I'm sure you guys have seen it by now. The New York Buffalo Police Department. It was some special section of like that helps with riots or something to that effect. There's about 57 members, and there is a video that is circulating. It is a 75-year-old white man who was pushed, and he was pushed by 3 grown men that were police officers. He did not do anything to provoke being pushed, and in fact, the police department lied about it at first before they knew that there was video of the incident, and they said that this old 75-year-old man simply tripped. Now, I see what they were doing. They were trying to pick and choose from the narrative and make their narrative a lot better than it actually was, because while he was pushed, if he wasn't 75 years old, then you know what? He probably could have caught himself. And even if he would have fallen, perhaps he could have used his hands or something. He would have been quick enough or strong enough to kind of stop his fall. He wasn't expecting these people to push him, and these police officers to push him and push him hard. And so he landed on his head. And you see that the cops are walking by. One cop tried to actually render him aid, but you see another cop pick him up and move him on his way. So the 2 cops that pushed him absolutely should have never did that. They were charged, rightfully so. They were charged with assault in the 2nd degree, which is a felony. Do you know that when they posted bail, because they had money to post bail, that's a whole nother issue, but when they posted bail, there was a community of people, about 50 people or more, cheering them on. Candace wants to talk about the Black community rallying around the lowest common denominator. These people were cheering these police officers on while the victim lay in a hospital bed, critical but stable condition. It is absolutely insanity, and that is why I will say it again. The only thing that I can reconcile Candace Owens' thought process in this whole situation is that she is getting paid. She is getting paid. She is getting gigs on Fox News and other places to disparage her own people. It is despicable. It's disgusting. The thing is so many people talk and they don't even know what they're talking about. Defunding the police does not mean that we are trying to abolish police officers off of the street. That is not what it means. What it means is police officers are doing too much. They are called when a drug overdose is happening. They're called when a dog bit the neighbor. They're called for every single thing, when really what needs to be happening is our healthcare system needs to change. We need resources for mental health. We need resources for drug addictions. We need resources for people to be able to get a good education. That is what defunding the police means. We don't need to be militarizing the police. We don't need to be putting so much money into the police and then have them control everything and be the person that you call for every single issue. It is ridiculous. It is so backwards. So for those of you that didn't know, that's what defunding the police it is. It is not abolishing police officers. No. Honestly, they are overworked. They can go from helping somebody off the ledge who wants to jump and commit suicide to having to deal with a situation where somebody's being held at gunpoint. They are just doing too much with very little training to boot. In conclusion, she just at the end says that she's not going to stand for people upholding criminals as martyrs. And she says that it is bullshit. That's what her words, it's bullshit. Okay, well, my words, what's bullshit, Candace, is the fact that you can sit there and say everything that you just said when you know that Donald Trump, who is the president of the United States right now, is a criminal. He is a criminal, he is a con man, and I know you know it, yet people hold him up. You can judge a person's character by the people who love him. Who loves Donald Trump? KKK? White supremacists? You should ask Donald Trump, Candace, how come he has deemed Antifa an anti-fascist movement, a terrorist group, but not the KKK? Is that also not a racial disparity? I'm actually really surprised that somebody like Candace Owens would actually have this mindset, because I did look some things up about her, and according to what I read, she was actually a victim of being racially targeted. I believe it was in high school, and somebody just used very pejorative racist terms. I'm sure you guys know the term that I'm referring to, use that word, and I don't know, I believe they may have threatened her life or something like that, because her family ended up suing this boy's family, and they actually got some compensation for what happened. Like in the tens of thousands of dollars compensation for what happened. And so for her to now act like racism is not a real issue is just absolutely appalling to me, because the truth of the matter is racism, it does not begin or end with the cops. It is everywhere. In all areas, all aspects of all of our lives. You know, I could probably speak to any Black person and I can tell you, I don't know exactly what the percentage would be, but it would be freaking high. Like if I'm just taking myself and Candace, that's two Black people. We've never crossed paths. We don't know each other. We don't live near each other. I've been called that word. So I bet you so many Black people have been called that word. And Candace, at a point, you cannot say that it is just a few people. While I do concede that it absolutely, and I am so grateful, I do concede that it is not the majority of Americans, it is not, or the majority of white people that act like that, but they are absolutely out there. If you have been called a racist name, if I have been called a racist name, my whole family has been called racist names, you've got to face the facts. And so while I did get, heated and frustrated and passionate in this video, I do not hate Candace at all. I don't. Like I said, I think that she's a very smart woman, but I do believe that something else is going on under the surface, because I just think that she's too smart to be ignorant to know what she is actually doing, what she's really doing. And what you're really doing, Candace, is not helping matters. You're not helping the racial tensions that is going on. It's one thing for you to want to uplift your Black community, or if you want the Black community to change and start doing better. That's one thing, and I'm all for that. Absolutely, I agree. But when you do it by disparaging your very own people, that's not a right way. That's not a good way to do it. You don't disparage your own people, especially if so many of your own people are struggling in life. And it seems like you're doing that for the almighty dollar. makes it worse. I'm definitely, absolutely going to pray for you. Yes, Donald Trump, I am going to pray for Candace Owens, even though it's despicable what I heard her say and what I have heard her say in the past. It's despicable, it's disgusting. But yes, Donald Trump, I'm going to pray for her, because that is what the word of God says. You don't keep it private. You shout it from the rooftops. You spread the Lord's word and further his kingdom. To George Floyd's family, I really hope that anybody who personally knew George Floyd and who loves George Floyd, I really hope that you don't have to endure listening to that, because you don't deserve it. He didn't deserve it. He didn't deserve to have that type of commentary about him, let alone from a fellow sister. And you guys don't deserve to hear it. My heart is with your family, with you guys. I am sure that you guys know that your family member, that George Floyd, I'm sure you guys know that he wasn't a perfect human being. And I know that you have never tried to make him out to be a perfect human being. I don't know where she gets that from. So I absolutely, definitely will be praying for, or have been praying for you and your family, just to have strength and, you know, a peace beyond all understanding. And from what I've seen, you know, from you guys on the television and in talking and online and whatnot, I do see that you guys are just being class act, the way that you're handling this like champions. So that's awesome. All right, God bless you guys. Yeah, that is what I had to say. Bye.